So today I want to talk to you about the most tremendous map for understanding your own soul and understanding your ideal society and brotherhood. This map struck me like a thunderbolt from Zeus last night under the stars, and I just want to share it to you in a really raw form before we clarify it deeper on this channel. So over here on the left side, we have the power of the soul, right? Which is magnetic. Over here on the right side, we have the power of the daimon. Daimon maxing, as I often speak about, which is electric. Okay. You need to understand these two forces if you want to understand the battles you face inside very deeply. So within every human heart, okay, there is this will, the soul will to start a family, to have loving friends, to play, to be an innocence, to express youth and vitality. And like my soul just wants a simple life fishing on a creek, writing fiction books and loving his family. And then also inside of me is the freaking daimon, okay? The daimon is the will to power, the will to bring forth your potential. The daimon is the part of my soul that dreams grand dreams at night, right? That wakes up with a fiery will to kick ass and take names. The daimon in general is a bit more masculine, right? And the daimon, if we look at in terms of archetypes, it's going to create an intellectual, autistic, tech, will-centric masculine right. So a lot of the people who watch Wisdom Warriors, they're interested in Western civilization. They're interested in building something beautiful of power and greatness with their lives. They're connected to the daimon. They're connected to the masculine will to power. And both of these elements within us, the soul and the daimon, they war for supremacy, right? The part of us that just wants to surrender and the part of us that wants to will. To go deeper into this dichotomy now. So the power of the soul, right, is the power of surrender, okay? And hear me out on this. Surrender versus will, okay? The power of the daimon is will and desire, okay? So the power of the soul. When the soul is oriented upwards, it's oriented towards God. What happens is the power of the mystic, the power of the priest unfolds. What is the mystic and the priest? The mystic and the priest is oriented towards God, but reaches God through surrender, through devotion, through the heart, right? The heart-centered spiritual practice. The daimon, on the other hand, when he is oriented upward, right, he approaches God through the intellect, through the willpower, and he manifests as a philosopher, specifically as an occult philosopher, or as someone like Nietzsche. And this is the daimon, this is the will to power oriented upwards. When surrender is oriented downwards, right? When you surrender into life itself, you actualize the power of the father, of the lover, of the jokester, right? And this is a very powerful archetype that I think everyone embodies at some point of their life. Is like they can't keep fighting life. We can't keep trying to fight to build our dream, to build our empire, to build something. And it's like we just need to accept what is and learn to love everything in front of us. And this is where great fathers and great lovers are born, right? When the daimon is directed downwards to the physical kingdom, right, to the earth, you actualize the power of the merchant, of the builder, of the architect, right? Also the power of the warrior. So within all of us, everyone watching this, you lean towards one of these. You lean more towards the daimon or the soul. The soul would be more type B people, the daimon more type A people, right? And inside of this dichotomy, okay, this dichotomy exists within every day. The best way to understand the daimon and the soul, and a way to use this map starting right now, right, is at night, what do? You dream the sacred dream before you go to sleep, right? You envision your life your day tomorrow, and how can you live it with maximum will to power. And when you wake up in the morning, you wake up with a daimon. You wake up with a will to execute, to kick some serious ass today, right? And you go to work. You wake up and you work with the will. And then in the afternoon, right, you take a walk. You eat dinner with friends. You surrender into the soul. You come back into the vibes, the heart, the community, the feminine, right? And this is the balance of like a beautiful day, is like, how do we do our duty with surrender and also with as much will as possible? And the whole balancing point of life, right, is not to surrender. Like inside of all of us, right, we have this battle between like the soul and the daimon, the lover and the philosopher. You know, a lot of great philosophers say that the philosopher is killed when he becomes a father. It's because they're opposites, right? But that does not mean the father has to kill the philosopher must kill the father. The real way to greatness is creating harmony between extremes, right? It's how can you live with more daimon and more soul? How can you live as a philosopher and a father? It's because tension is generative. This is the thing, is most people, especially in the personal development space, the spiritual space, they will say to negate desire or something like that. They will say to negate the daimon. This is the Eastern teaching. Who teaches in the East? The mystics teach in the East. What do the mystics want to do? They want to surrender to God. Hence, they teach a practice of surrendering desire, surrendering power. What I'm saying here is that real greatness and real Buddhas are born when you combine the magnetic and the electric, the daimon and the soul, into a beautiful harmony. And this is the balance that each of us must strike in our own way throughout our lives. This is enlightenment, right? It's like, man, I feel all of these desires to build something beautiful with my life, to build a kingdom, to lead a brotherhood, to unite people around the globe. I feel this burn in my soul. And when I just go to Hawaii for 3 weeks, and I did this vacation for 3 weeks in Hawaii to eco villages, and I just surrendered a lot, right? And I was just on beaches. It was beautiful for like 2 weeks. And then a part of me started to get so restless. In fact, it felt like I was letting go and abandoning my destiny. I wasn't listening to my real heart that wanted to build the most glorious thing the world has ever seen. I have tons of daimon in me. And to abandon desire is actually spiritual castration. This is the problem with a lot of Eastern teachings for Western people. If you burn with daimon, your highest actualization is not the negation of the daimon, but learning how to bring it into balance with your soul. It is all about the union of opposites. That's what this map is trying to communicate. Now, within every individual's life out there, right, there is 2 powers that are more absolute and more powerful than anything else in the world, right? And that is surrender and desire. So this is really interesting, and this is why most spiritual teachings are really intense about their philosophy around surrender or their philosophy around desire, is because at any moment in the day, you can ask yourself, do you need to let go more? Do you need to go meditate and release your mind, listen more, feel what is going on in your reality? Do you need more surrender? And oftentimes, like, this is the real gateway that we're scared to take, right? I know when I was going through this period of intense turmoil, of needing to like let go of my business, let go of my relationship that I was in for many years, like the love of my life and all this shit. I didn't do it. I stayed in this house of cards of a life, this life of so much turmoil and existential crisis and pain, because I was scared of surrendering. And I felt like I was going away from myself until I broke up with her, moved into my van, left my community behind, and went into the desert to cry to God for fucking months straight, right? This was a period of really deep surrender. But that deep surrender, I had to let go of the daimon. I had to let go of my desires to go find my real heart. And it was the scariest thing I've ever done, right? But it is that surrender that reshaped the freaking world. It brought God into my life like a fire. It birthed a book that came through me, The Psychology of Slaying Dragons. It reoriented my entire life. It created the Wisdom Warriors YouTube channel and led me to doing what I'm doing today. If I didn't have that period of surrender, I never would have found my destiny and dharma. Surrender is literally a force of nature. When you decide that I'm going to let go of everything and I'm going to face my deepest fears, and you go off that cliff with your arms open, you change the world. You change your destiny, right? So surrender is the power of the soul. And you can go through life with the philosophy of surrender. If you ever read the book, it's called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. It's a great thesis on how the power of surrender can reshape everything. Now, there is an equal and opposite power to surrender, and that is the power of desire, the power of a burning desire, the power of will. If you've ever read How to Think and Grow Rich, this is one of the first things is you decide on what you want. I want to build the next great town, right? And you put that on your wall. And what you must do every day is you build burning desire, a burning will to achieve that dream. When I was between the ages of about 10 to 18, I wanted to be the valedictorian of my high school class. I wanted to go to the greatest university in the world. I wanted it so bad. In fact, I wanted it worse than everyone else. And I wasn't the smartest person in my high school class, but guess what? I wanted to win worse than everyone. And I became the valedictorian of a very competitive high school, right? And I got into that Ivy League school where I eventually dropped out of. But the interesting thing is I didn't win that fight, that competition, because I was the smartest. I won because I wanted it the most. And think about the days. Think about the periods and seasons of your life where you wanted something bad. You wanted it with your whole being. You wanted to be the champion on that sports field, or you wanted to be the best boxer in the world. What did you do? You woke up and you trained for hours and hours and hours. You went far beyond what you could have done if you didn't want it that bad. And as my dad used to tell me before every soccer match, whoever wants it more usually wins, right? This is the power of the Daimon. And my friends, if you feel stagnant in your life, like you have let go of a lot of things, but like you don't know what to do, and you feel like your life isn't building towards a great business, right? Or a great philosophy or any of these things, what you actually need is more Daimon, a more will to power, more spirit, more ambition, more passion, right? And this is going to build your masculinity in general. This is why young men in general dream dreams of heroes, heroic dreams. They love the hero in books. What does the hero represent? The hero represents the glorious ambition to excellence, becoming all that you can be. It is the Daimon incarnated. So you need both of these things. And to bring this really down to earth, it's like, how can you have more burning desire when you go to work? And then once you're in a flow state, how can you surrender more, right? If you're really wrestling with emotions, like the other day I was wrestling with a lot of frustration, anger, and passions inside of me. What did I need to do? I didn't need to work. My Daimon was overheated, right? I needed to go take a walk and meditate. And channeling the Daimon into a deep surrender, I found the mystical path to God, right? I surrendered to God. And it's amazing when you have tension in your soul, when you have this feeling, this restless Daimon, and you overcome him through surrender, you find God. And when you have laziness in your soul and you overcome it with the Daimon, you also find God. And this brings us to the deep shadow of all of these forces, right? So this is what my previous video is going to be about, or maybe my next one. But within this map, there is the counter side to this map right here. And by the way, I cover all of these archetypes on your screen in the Retribalize project, which is more about the social side of building tribes. The Wisdom Warriors is more about the personal path to self-actualization. So within this graph here, between soul and Daimon, right, you have shadows. The shadow of the physical kingdom is what Rudolf Steiner would call Ahriman, right? So Ahriman is down here. So Ahriman is the force of materialism. Christianity personified him as Satan, right? The devil. And Ahriman, when the soul surrenders to the earth, but it doesn't do it in a way of becoming a father and a lover, what the soul surrenders into is actually pleasure, right? Let's say you're a father lover archetype. You want to do that. You'd be great as a farmer, right? But you don't have those people around you. You probably waste a lot of time scrolling. You probably waste a lot of time smoking weed, vegetating, drinking. You chase pleasure, right? And when the daemon is oriented towards the earth, but is in the shadow of the daemon, what happens is egotism. Think about the dark warrior. The fallen warrior is the egoic thug. The fallen merchant builder is the cocaine addict. It is the Adderall addict trying to force himself to build things with the daemon, becoming very materialistic, right? So the shadow of the daemon into the physical world is, right, is going to be stimulant addiction, and it's also going to be materialism, egotism, burnout. It's a burnt out warrior. Now, the shadow of the soul surrendering to God, if you don't actualize the full mystic and priest, what happens to you is you get addicted to weed. You find God through and creativity through substances like weed, or you are, doing a bunch of MDMA at festivals, or you get addicted to ketamine, or you become a new age spiritual bro who's all wishy-washy tantra guy. And that's because your soul is trying to figure out a way to surrender to God, but you do it through its shadow. And the shadow of the godly world, guess who it is? Our big old friend Lucifer, right? So we have Lucifer and Ahriman. Luciferic addictions are going to be addictions that orient upwards. So if you're doing like ketamine at a festival, or if you have a lot of daemon, right, you get addicted to grandiosity, the pride of the philosopher, right? Because you have a lot of Luciferic energy trying to reach upwards. So in general, all of you battle with these primary tensions in your life, right? You battle with the tension between the daemon and the soul, and then you battle with the tension between the heavenly kingdom and Lucifer. And then you battle with the tension between the physical kingdom and Ahriman. And the whole quest of the sage, the whole quest of greatness, is to actualize the archetypes you see on your screen in their fullness. Instead of, like seeking pleasure at night, you become an artist, right? Instead of abandoning yourself to, like desires, you become a lover and a father. Instead of, let's say, getting addicted to grandiosity and becoming a narcissist or an egotist, you become a real philosopher or a merchant, right? So essentially, we have to figure out where we sit on this map and elevate ourselves to the full archetype and learn to balance the daemon and the soul. Thanks for watching, my friends. This is the most powerful map out there I've found for understanding my psyche and the tribes we need to build. If you want to build your tribe, there is actually a link below to talk to me one-on-one. I unite a lot of the, aspirational seekers who are into philosophy, who want to build exceptional things in the world and want to find their best friends. The brotherhood's growing, my friends, and there's a link below. I'm actually here in Colombia with a couple guys from this YouTube channel. So come join us, and also go check out the Retribalize podcast, where I talk about all of these archetypes more in depth. Thanks for watching, Wisdom Warriors. You can click this video to go deeper into this map of the daemon and the soul. Peace.